Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm John, and this is the KAA Kajukenbo Deep Dive. Welcome back. My guest today is Grandmaster Lynn Case, coming out of Idaho. Is that right today, sir?
Yes, yeah, out of Idaho.
Thank you for joining us. I had a couple of hiccups today as we're starting to record. I do want to say that when I started talking with you on the phone, we talked with each other, I noticed something was familiar, something about the way you're talking, and then I came to realize, yeah, you have work in law enforcement. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got into the martial arts?
Okay. So it all started back in 1974. You interviewed Senior Grandmaster Paz. He's my instructor.
Yes.
And our stories kind of came together clear back then. We both joined the same school. He was a little bit ahead of me and and had some previous experience. So he was, of course, my senior. Mm-hmm. And how that happened is I'd been looking for something to do, a sport to take, and tried some wrestling and enjoyed it, had a lot of fun, just not quite what I wanted to do. And then we had a couple of guys come into the high school and do a demonstration. I was, yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's give that a try. So we went into Nampa, Idaho, in the Boise Valley. This is where we started at, and started some martial arts lesson. I remember back then it was before I could drive. In Idaho at that time, you could drive at 14, and well, yeah, it's a farming state, and yeah, so we could drive pretty young. But I wasn't quite driving yet, so my mom would take me in. And she'd sit outside and crochet while I was in the class taking lessons because she couldn't stand to come in and see what was going on.
That's a loving mother.
She'd take me to go get my butt kicked, but she wouldn't watch it.
So, that's a loving mother. I got that.
Yeah. So we spent a few years doing that, and then of course I could drive and went in and did it myself, and it was rough. Holy cow! Back in the 70s. I didn't see a mat to fall on until I opened my own school in the mid 80s. Wow. And then I bought one. That was the first mat I saw to fall on. Other than that, we were doing our break falls on asphalt. We were doing it on basketball court floors, a solid linoleum floor. When we were on a good day, we could go outside and do it in the grass.
Well, that was lucky.
That was so nice.
Well, I imagine you learned very quickly to keep your head off the floor.
Oh gosh, yeah. We learned a lot of things really quickly. Yeah, so we'd go to and we'd do that. And tournaments back then were really rare, but every now and then one would pop up and we could go to them, and we did fine. We did well. And so I think I got my black belt in 5 years when I was 18, 19, and we were still training with the same guys. And then I went off on I served an LDS mission in Houston, Texas. And while I was gone, there was some fallout between Senior Grandmaster Paz and the head instructor of the school. And everybody decided we needed to just go our separate ways. Mm-hmm. And so while I was gone, Senior Grandmaster Paz, of course, split away and hooked up under a guy from the Kajukenbo system. Now, the system we were studying before was Kajukenbo, which was also a Hawaiian style, but not related in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. But a gentleman from Portland heard about us and came over and checked out the school and decided to take us under his wing and started us in Kajukenbo, which brought us into the Gaylord method.
I see.
And what we learned wasn't the Gaylord method. It was what he was teaching, but that was the lineage that we now have, which came really important as we progressed as martial artists.
Can I ask what the difference was? You mentioned that wasn't quite the Gaylord method.
He was under Gaylord, but he had modified the techniques to make them his own, and they were different. They were good. They were really good. Mm-hmm. That just wasn't what Great Grandmaster himself was teaching at that time.
Okay. Now, when was the first time that you met Great Grandmaster Gaylord? What happened there?
So, yeah, man, that's hard to think back that far. So I started my police career in Caldwell and then moved to Idaho Falls across the state and started a school over here. And we were doing running the school over here. And then every now and then I'd be able to go back to the Boise Valley and train with Senior Grandmaster. And for one reason or another, we moved on from that instructor to his instructor, and that eventually didn't work out. And we moved under Great Grandmaster Gaylord. And you covered how all that happened with Senior Grandmaster Paz's interview. Mm-hmm. So we moved under Senior Grandmaster then. And I think the first time I met him was probably, I made a trip to San Francisco for a black belt workout. Mm-hmm. And it was probably my first actual introduction to Great Grandmaster himself. Mm-hmm. And so what happened there is we rolled in and we were doing the workout. And being from Idaho, particularly East Idaho, it's really, really dry. It's mm-hmm. a high desert. It's really dry. And I go to San Francisco, it's really wet. And I wasn't working that hard at the seminar. It was great. I was used to the contact because that's what we did, and it was a good workout. It was a lot of fun. I was having a great time, but I was soaked, absolutely soaked. And so we broke for lunch, and I remember I was watching him. Great Grandmaster talked to one of the ladies there. I'm real sure she was hooked up with hand to hand. Uh-huh. And next thing I know, there was a couple of the hand-to-hand people over taking care of me, making sure I had water, and making sure that I had somebody there, with you, because you don't want somebody being alone, right? Anyway, they took really good care of me, and I have just adored them ever since.
Oh, that's great.
The fact that he would take the time out of his day with his actual students to deal with somebody that he just barely met. Mm-hmm. Kind of told me a lot about him, about his character and the way he treated people. And that proved to be true for the rest of the time that we were together. Uh-huh. He was just kind and caring and mean when he had to be, mm-hmm. As we all know. But his concern for others, I think, was a huge part of his character, too. And then I made a few trips to California and worked out with them there at a few of the black belt workouts and some of the picnics and get-togethers. And then he would come into Boise mm-hmm. with Senior Grandmaster Paz, and he'd come in and do seminars a couple times a year. He'd come over and do that. So we got a chance to meet with him and work out with him and socialize with him then. Mm-hmm. And I learned a lot just from that, just how to treat people and how to be a good, solid martial artist. It was educational. I learned a lot.
So, excellent. So you mentioned that you talked with them, you kind of socialized with them, and that changed that kind of taught you things as well. What would you say he was like? You mentioned a little about it already. How would you describe him as a person to a stranger?
Well, when the seminar started, it was a beatdown, as they usually are. But that was okay. Once again, that we were used to that. That's the way we played. And so he'd come in and he'd teach us and he'd show us the effectiveness of the techniques, and he would give us insights that we hadn't seen yet on how to make techniques work. He was really big on the pressure points, and he was really big on chi and how to control that. And he spent a little time with us refining our knowledge about those things. And then we'd go out to supper afterwards, and it was kind of interesting to watch, because I knew who I had to take care of. My job was to take care of Senior Grandmaster Paz, because he's my immediate superior. His job was to take care of Great Grandmaster Gaylord, because that's his superior. And I'll be danged if I didn't watch Great Grandmaster Gaylord take care of the youngest. It just went full circle that way. And he made sure everybody had what they needed and was good that way. But the one-on-one talks with him, I think they were really telling on the way he cared about people. He could be as tough as nails, absolutely no question. But he was also very concerned. He was happy where we were martial arts wise, fighting wise, and forms wise. He was happy with that. But he wanted to make sure, he was concerned with making sure we were good people and that we were doing what we should be doing. And I know that with Senior Grandmaster Paz, he took his wife aside and spent a little time talking to her, and made sure that she was keeping him out of trouble, making sure he was treating her right as he should, and spent a little time talking to her and making sure that his temper didn't get him in trouble too much, and he could talk him out of things. And then he pulled my wife aside too, and did the same thing. Made sure that I was acting as I should, that I was a good husband, and that I was a good father to the children. And then, yeah, I had a chat with her about keeping me out of trouble too.
And
So
she's
he
been
was
with
really,
you ever since.
and she has a full-time job, so she can't get fired, right? Yeah. So his concern about how we treated each other and how we were as people was huge. His concern about loyalty was every bit as big as his desire for us to be successful martial artists. That was one of the main things that he made sure that we were solid on, was loyalty. We were, and there was, yeah, with Senior Grandmaster Paz, there was no toleration for anything that other than pure loyalty, straight, strong loyalty to him and to the system and to the method of the great Grandmaster. He wouldn't tolerate anything else.
Okay.
I remember one time he tested me. He pulled me off to the side and was talking to me. He was bringing up the subject of promotions, and the conversation was going to where he was going to offer a promotion. And before we got there, I had to stop him and tell him, no, I get my promotions from Senior Grandmaster Paz. That's my instructor. That's who I stay with. He gives me my promotions. And he just got this smile on his face and nodded his head. And yeah, so.
Excellent.
Yeah, loyalty is huge.
Got tested right there.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a little bit about the loyalty section? Because actually, I was just talking with another Kajukenbo black belt, the other one here in Japan. He's releasing a podcast, and we're actually talking about kind of an odd topic with martial arts, but cults. So that's going to be coming out soon, this week or next week, I think. When you mention loyalty, talking about Grandmaster Gaylord, can you tell me a little bit what that means? Because there's a difference between somebody who kind of blindly follows and then goes kind of that cult mentality of martial arts, but then there's the loyalty of your teaching father, the people that helped you and that are your family. Can you tell me a little bit more about that loyalty, what that means? Surprise question. Sorry, I caught you off guard.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Loyalty to me meant that I recognized who my line of authority is. Mm-hmm. Senior Grandmaster Paz and I go back to the mid 70s, 45 years or so. Mm-hmm. And I am absolutely, positively, completely loyal to him. But as soon as he deviates from a proper path, mm-hmm. we'll part ways, or we'll have some discussions and fix it. That's a cult. If you don't do that, that's a cult. Loyalty is you recognize who they are and what they've done for you, and give them recognition for all that. Excellent.
And you feel like Grandmaster Gaylord, that was the kind of loyalty that he was instilling in the students.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. He would encourage people to go out and learn new things from other places. And never had a fear of us leaving him. And if we did, that was fine. But I don't think that somebody that has you completely locked in and this is the only thing, that would be a cult. Right. That's not his thing. Right. He wanted the best for everybody. And so long as you recognize him for what he was and what he did for you and remained loyal to him, then boy, you had a friend for life. Mm-hmm. I went down there one time for a seminar, and he heard that I was staying at a hotel, and he wasn't having any of that. I had to go to his house, which was awesome. And we got up in the morning, and he insisted on fixing breakfast. Wow. Typical Hawaiian breakfast. I think it was hash browns and sausage. Right on. Breakfast of champions. And then right after breakfast, he took the time to, right there in his front room, we moved the couch, the table to the side, and got a little space, and he taught me punch counter number 1. Oh, nice. He taught me punch counter 1A and 1B. And so, man, right straight from great Grandmaster Gaylord, I was so impressed. But yeah, that's who he was. He was always on. You know what I mean? It wasn't everything was martial arts. Mm-hmm. The way you ate, the way you treated people, mm-hmm. and if he had a chance to share his knowledge, he would absolutely do that. And that was him showing loyalty to us. Mm-hmm. So we should absolutely show that back.
Excellent. So what would you say was the biggest impact that great Grandmaster Gaylord had on the martial arts and the world?
I think all those guys presented to the world martial arts effectiveness. It wasn't, nobody's really interested in point fighting. Nobody was really interested in that game of tag. It was, is this effective? Does this work? And if I need something, if I'm weak in a particular area, then we should strengthen ourselves there. Thus, the 5 founders and the 5 basic methods, and of course we've added to that as time has gone on, right? So I think his desire to continue to learn, and he did that his whole life. He was always learning something new. He didn't get locked into something, and this is the only way. He always looked for the best way. And I think that was one of the big impressions that he made on the martial arts world was always be looking, always be trying to be better. Don't get locked in on one thing. I think that's probably, and then of course he spread his method worldwide, and there's schools everywhere.
Yes. Okay. Now I'm gonna throw another curveball if you don't mind, and I have a question for you specifically. Your time with Grandmaster Gaylord, you saw different types of martial arts. There's Kajukenbo, but then there's other branches and the different styles you've seen. In your line of work, do you feel that the Gaylord method had any important thing for police officers or people working security, for example?
So I spent 30 years as a police officer and retired back in 2014, and went to the police academy, and I was teaching all the arrest technique systems there. And now I run a police academy here in Southeast Idaho. So my experience in that world, pretty extensive. The thing that I liked most about Kajukenbo was it was the effectiveness. I think was probably the big thing, because we had other martial artists on the department, but it was kind of weak. We had one guy, we got together and we were sparring, and he throws a roundhouse kick and he catches my elbow, and so now he's hopping around, he's going, ow, 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 man. Oh, I think we got to take a break. And I just looked at him and said, got another foot? Oh, wow.
I gave you 2.
Yeah, he gave you 2. You got another one sitting right there. Put that to work. And that concept had never occurred to him, that you have to continue the fight.
Right.
And that's what Kajukenbo did for us. There's no tapping out. There's no taking a break. You fight till the fight's done. And that became really important. The way it affected my job and the way I did it, I think, was more to do with self-confidence and the way I presented myself to people and what they felt from me. 30 years, and I never hit somebody with a closed fist. Never did. Never kicked anybody. I spent 40 years training and never did it.
You're disappointed.
Small amount of disappointment. I never got to. And I attribute that to, I knew how to move. I knew how to stop what they were going to do without having to strike them. I could convince them to do what I needed them to do because they understood they didn't have a choice. And then the application, I did use a bunch of joint locks and a bunch of takedowns and some groundwork and things like that to control people, which is directly related to the way we trained our martial arts. So, yeah, I attribute Kajukenbo in particular to, not having to use it. And I think that's a solid master, somebody that knows it, they're solid with it, they can use it if they need to, but they got nothing to prove. They don't have to.
All right.
I also consider myself pretty lucky that I didn't have to, but.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're almost finished for the podcast today, Grandmaster. One last question. If you could pass any message on to Grandmaster Gaylord now, what would you want to tell him?
I think I'd tell him a couple things. First of all, as anybody should, thank you. Thank you so much for continuing with what you learned in Hawaii and under Sijo and your other instructors. Thank you for giving that to us. Just to have that opportunity to train with somebody who knows the real deal and can pass that on, I think that's huge. So I would first say thank you, and then I would reassure him that we're working hard to continue his legacy. The KAA is up and coming. It's coming back stronger than ever, and we're going to continue the torch, and it's going to get better than ever. And So thank you, and rest assured, we're doing all we can to continue your legacy.
All right. That's all the time we have for today. So thank you for joining us, Grandmaster. For those of you at home, thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, stay strong, stay Kajukenbo strong. Mahalo.